I never thought I'd be the kind of mother who'd throw her own daughter out on the street in the middle of a Cleveland winter. But sometimes love looks like cruelty until you understand what it's really doing. My name is Marge Kowalski, and I'm 52 years old. I work 70 hours a week, at 2 jobs, 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, at an industrial laundry on Broadway Avenue, then 6 at night until midnight scrubbing floors in the Terminal Tower downtown. My hands are raw, my back is killing me, and I sleep maybe 4 hours on a good night. But I've never missed a rent payment. Not once in 30 years. My daughter Linda is 26. She moved back into my 2-bedroom apartment 3 years ago, after her engagement fell apart, and I couldn't say no. She was heartbroken, lost, and I thought, just for a little while, just until she gets back on her feet. She promised it would be temporary. It wasn't temporary. Linda got a good job as a secretary at a law firm. Decent pay, benefits, the kind of stability I've never had in my entire life. I thought she'd save up, find her own place, maybe even help out with groceries. Instead, she bought designer clothes. She took weekend trips with her girlfriends. She started dating Rick, this smooth-talking insurance salesman with a Pontiac Firebird and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He practically lived at my apartment, eating my food, leaving his cigarette butts everywhere and never once offering to contribute a single dollar. And Linda, she treated my home like a hotel, stayed out late, slept in, acted like I was the maid. When I asked her to chip in for the electric bill, which had doubled since she moved in, she barely looked up from painting her nails. "Mom, I'm building my career. I need to invest in myself right now." I bit my tongue, like I always do. But last Tuesday night, everything changed. The gas company sent a final notice. I realized I'd have to choose between heat and food. Linda was getting ready to go out, full makeup, new coat I'd never seen before, and I stopped her at the door. "Linda, honey, I need to talk to you about the gas bill." She cut me off with a sigh that made me feel 2 inches tall. "Jesus, Mom, not this again. You're always complaining about money. Maybe if you managed your finances better." "I work 70 hours a week, Linda." She grabbed her purse, rolled her eyes like I was a child asking for candy. "Then get a 3rd job and stop guilt-tripping me. I have my own expenses. I can't be responsible for your poor planning." The door slammed. I stood there in my kitchen, the same kitchen where her father proposed to me in 1947, where I've eaten 10,000 meals alone since becoming a widow. And something inside me snapped. Not like breaking, like waking up. I didn't sleep that night. At 4:30 in the morning, I got up and made coffee in my mother's old percolator. I sat at the Formica table Stanley bought at a yard sale in 1958, and I wrote a letter. "Linda, I love you more than my own life, but love doesn't mean letting you use me. You have 30 days to find your own place. This isn't punishment. This is me loving you enough to let you grow up." Then I walked 6 blocks through the December snow to a payphone and called my landlord. "I need the lease changed. Just my name, not my daughter's. She's moving out." By noon, the official eviction notice was taped to her bedroom door. When Linda came home that evening, still glowing from another expensive lunch with Rick, she found me sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and 30 days' worth of resolve in my eyes. "What the hell is this?" She waved the paper, her voice shrill with disbelief. "It's a notice. You have 30 days to find your own apartment. You're kicking me out? Your own daughter? I'm giving you what you asked for. Independence." Her face went from shock to rage to something that looked like hatred. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. I can't believe it took me this long. That was 3 days ago. Linda hasn't spoken to me since. She moved in with Rick immediately, threw her things in garbage bags and left without saying goodbye. The apartment feels enormous and empty without her. Some nights I lie awake wondering if I just destroyed the only family I have left, wondering if my daughter will ever forgive me. wondering if I did the right thing or the most terrible thing a mother can do. But here's what I know. I raised Linda to be strong, independent, capable of standing on her own 2 feet. Instead, I let her become someone who uses people and calls it love. Someone who takes and never thinks about what it costs the people carrying her. I had to stop carrying her, even if it means she hates me, even if it means spending Christmas alone, even if it means losing her forever. Because sometimes the hardest thing you can do for someone you love is let them fall. Let them feel the weight of their own choices. Let them discover whether they're strong enough to stand back up. My mother used to tell me, Małgorzata, dignity isn't about what you do. It's about how you do it. She worked until her hands were twisted with arthritis, and she never complained. She never asked me for anything. She taught me that love sometimes looks like sacrifice, and sacrifice sometimes looks like saying no. I'm terrified I made the wrong choice. I'm terrified Linda will never understand what I was trying to teach her. I'm terrified that in trying to save her from becoming a user, I've lost her completely. But I'm also terrified of what would have happened if I'd done nothing, if I'd kept enabling her, kept sacrificing myself on the altar of her convenience, kept pretending that letting her walk all over me was the same thing as loving her. 3 weeks from now, Linda will have to face the consequences of her choices. She'll have to decide what kind of person she wants to be. The kind who takes responsibility for her life, or the kind who always expects someone else to catch her when she falls. And I'll have to live with whatever happens next, whether she comes back changed and grateful, or whether she disappears into Rick's world and I never see her again, whether I saved her or lost her, whether tough love is really love at all, or just another name for breaking your own heart. Right now, sitting in this quiet apartment with the radiator clanking and the snow falling outside, I don't know how this story ends. I don't know if I'll be spending next Christmas with a daughter who's learned what I was trying to teach her, or if I'll be spending it alone, wondering what might have been if I'd just kept my mouth shut and let her keep using me. All I know is this. I made a choice. I signed my name to that lease change. I put my daughter's name on an eviction notice. And now we both have to live with the weight of that signature. Whatever it costs us, whatever it teaches us, whatever it destroys or builds between us. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Sometimes being a good mother means being the villain in your child's story, until they're mature enough to understand you were the hero all along. I just hope Linda figures it out before it's too late. Before the distance between us becomes too wide to cross. Before tough love turns into permanent loss. I hope I did the right thing. God, I hope I did the right thing. But I won't know until I see what happens when those 30 days are up. I've scrubbed floors for 26 years, and I can tell you something most people don't know. Linoleum remembers everything. Every scuff mark, every spill, every footprint tells a story. Sometimes I think my life is like those floors, worn down in the same spots, cleaned over and over, but never quite coming clean. My name is Marge Kowalski, and I wake up every morning at 4:30. Not because I want to, not because an alarm goes off, but because my body doesn't know how to sleep past that hour anymore. Even on Sundays when I should rest, I'm up before dawn, listening to the radiator clank in my apartment on East 71st Street, watching the snow fall past the streetlight outside my window. Cleveland in December is like living inside a freezer. The wind comes off Lake Erie with teeth in it, and it doesn't matter how many layers you wear. It finds a way through. This morning, like every morning, I wrapped myself in the wool coat Stanley bought me in 1963, the year before the cancer took him. The lining is torn, the buttons don't match anymore, but it still keeps me warm enough for the 6-block walk to the bus stop. I live in a neighborhood people used to call Slavic Village. Poles, Czechs, Slovaks, all mixed together in these narrow houses with painted wooden porches and Virgin Mary statues in the yards. My mother came here from Krakow in 1923 with nothing but a cardboard suitcase and her sister's address written on a piece of paper. She cleaned houses for rich families on Shaker Heights until her hands looked like they'd been carved from soap. She used to tell me, Małgorzata, that's my real name, though Americans could never say it right. Dignity isn't about what you do. It's about how you do it. I think about that every morning when I punch in at Cleveland Linen Supply. The plant sits off Broadway Avenue, a hulking brick building that smells like industrial bleach and hot steam. I've worked there since 1949, the year after Stanley came back from the war with shrapnel in his leg and a Purple Heart he kept in a cigar box under the bed. Back then I was young and strong, and lifting wet sheets from the washers didn't make my back scream. Now I'm 52, and every load feels like it weighs more than the last. Morning, Marge. Betty Kowalczyk waves from her station. She's been here almost as long as I have. Her hair tied up in a kerchief the color of faded roses. Cold enough for you? Could be colder, I say, hanging my coat on the hook. Could always be colder. We fall into the rhythm like we do every day. Load, wash, transfer, fold. The machines roar so loud you can't think, which is maybe a blessing. 6 hours of that noise, and your brain goes quiet. The hospital linens come in bins marked with red biohazard tags. The restaurant tablecloths smell like old grease and cigarettes. The hotel sheets, those come from the Statler and the Hollenden House downtown, sometimes have lipstick stains that don't come out no matter how much bleach we use. How's Linda? Betty shouts over the machinery. I pretend I don't hear her. Linda, my daughter. My beautiful, ungrateful 26-year-old daughter, who lives rent-free in my 2-bedroom apartment and acts like I'm the one inconveniencing her. At 2 o'clock I punch out, catch the RTA bus downtown, and eat a sandwich I packed at 5 that morning. Bologna on white bread, wrapped in wax paper slightly warm from sitting in my purse all day. The bus lurches through the gray slush of Euclid Avenue, past the storefronts with signs in Polish and Slovak, past St. Stanislaus Church where I go every Sunday morning before my shift, past the houses getting smaller and shabbier the closer we get to downtown. Terminal Tower rises up like a promise Cleveland made to itself and couldn't quite keep. 52 stories of limestone and ambition, the second tallest building in the world when they finished it in 1930. Now it's just another office building full of lawyers and accountants and insurance men in narrow ties. I clean their floors. I've been doing this for 11 years, ever since Stanley died and the life insurance money ran out. Frank's janitorial service pays me $3 an hour. Cash, no benefits. I work from 6 at night until midnight, sometimes later if they're having a big conference or someone spills coffee in the executive suite. Most nights I work alone. Just me and my cart full of supplies. Ammonia, rags, a mop with a wooden handle smooth from years of use. I start on the 51st floor and work my way down. The lawyers' offices are the worst. Papers everywhere, ashtrays overflowing, sometimes half-eaten takeout rotting in desk drawers. The accountants are neater, but they leave their adding machine tapes all over the floor like confetti. I like the silence up here, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the squeak of my cartwheels on the marble hallways, the view from the windows, Cleveland spread out below me like a quilt of lights, the lake a black emptiness beyond. Sometimes I stand at those windows and think about how different the city looks from up here. Clean, organized, beautiful even. From down where I live, Cleveland just looks tired. I got home around 12:30 that night, my feet aching so bad I could barely climb the stairs to my apartment. The hallway smelled like Mrs. Nowak's cabbage rolls and Mr. Kowalski's cigars. No relation, just a coincidence of names. I fumbled with my keys, finally got the door open, and stepped into the warmth. Linda was on the couch, watching Johnny Carson with her feet up on the coffee table I'd polished just that morning. She didn't look up. "There's pierogi in the oven if you want some," I said, hanging up my coat. "I ate already." Her eyes stayed on the television. She was wearing a new sweater, cashmere by the look of it, the kind of thing I'd never be able to afford. "That's pretty," I said, gesturing to the sweater. "Rick bought it for me." Rick, the boyfriend, the insurance salesman with the Pontiac Firebird and the smooth line of talk. He'd been coming around for 6 months now, eating my food, using my bathroom, leaving his cigarette butts in my clean ashtrays. We went to theatrical restaurant for dinner. You should see this place, Mom. Red velvet everywhere. Pictures of movie stars on the walls. They have a guy who plays piano. Sounds nice. It was. She stretched, yawned. Rick says I should get my own apartment soon. Something more sophisticated. My heart did a little jump. "You're moving out?" "Eventually. When I find the right place. Somewhere in Cleveland Heights, maybe. Rick knows a guy who knows a building manager." She said this like she was doing me a favor, like she was the generous one. But I need to save up first. Security deposit, furniture, all that. I looked at her. Really looked at her. When had she become this person? This stranger with my late husband's blue eyes and my mother's cheekbones, and absolutely none of their character. "Linda," I said carefully. "I got the gas bill today." She groaned. "Mom, please. I just got home. It's $68. That's almost double what it was last month. So, pay it. I can barely afford the rent as it is. With you here, the utilities... I didn't ask you to keep this place so cold." She finally looked at me, her expression annoyed. "You're always complaining about money, but you never do anything about it. Get a better job. Ask for a raise. Do something besides whining." The words hit me like a slap. I stood there in my worn-out coat, my hands still smelling like ammonia, and I felt something crack inside my chest. "I work 70 hours a week, Linda. And whose fault is that?" She turned back to the TV. "I'm building my career, Mom. I can't be supporting you right now. I have my own expenses. Supporting me. In my own apartment. In the home I'd kept together with spit and prayer since her father died. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her. Instead, I did what I always did. I bit my tongue, went to my bedroom, and closed the door. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Linda laugh at something on the television, and I thought about my mother. She'd worked until she was 73, until her hands were so twisted with arthritis, she couldn't hold a dish rag anymore. She'd never asked me for a dime, never complained, never made me feel like I owed her something for the sacrifices she made. And here was Linda, living rent-free, contributing nothing, and telling me to get a third job. At 4:30, I got up like always, made coffee in the percolator that had been my mother's, that had been her mother's, before that. The apartment was quiet except for Linda's snoring from her bedroom. I sat at the kitchen table, the same Formica table where Stanley proposed to me in 1947, where Linda did her homework in elementary school, where I'd eaten 10,000 meals alone since becoming a widow. And I made a decision. I took out a piece of paper and a pen. My hand shook as I wrote, "Linda, I love you more than my own life. You know that. But love doesn't mean letting you use me. I raised you to be strong, to be independent, to stand on your own 2 feet. Instead, I've let you become dependent and entitled, and that's my fault as much as yours. I've asked Mr. Greenberg to change the lease. Your name is no longer on it. You have 30 days to find your own place. I'll help you pack. I'll even help you move. But you can't stay here anymore. This isn't punishment. This is me loving you enough to let you grow up. Mom." I folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and left it on the table where she'd find it. Then I put on my coat and walked out into the December darkness. The streets were empty. the snow falling in thick, silent curtains. I walked 6 blocks to the payphone outside Rudy's Market, my breath making clouds in the frozen air. I dropped a dime in the slot and dialed Mr. Greenberg's number. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Mr. Greenberg, it's Marge Kowalski. I'm sorry to call so early." "Marge, what's wrong? Is it the heat?" "No, nothing like that. I need to ask you something." I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles went white. "The lease. Can you change it? Take Linda's name off, just me." There was a long pause. "Marge, are you sure? That's your daughter." "I'm sure. It'll take a few days for the paperwork, but yeah, I can do that. You want me to send her an official notice?" "Yes, please." "Okay. Marge, you all right?" "I will be," I said, and I hung up. By the time I got to work that morning, I felt like I'd run a marathon. My legs were shaking, my heart was pounding, and I kept replaying that phone call in my head. Betty took one look at me and brought me a cup of coffee from the break room. "You look like death," she said. "What happened?" "I kicked Linda out." Her eyebrows shot up. "You what?" "I gave her notice. 30 days. She has to leave." Betty sat down next to me, her face a mix of shock and something that might have been respect. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph! Marge, are you serious?" "Dead serious." "What did she say?" "She doesn't know yet. She'll find the letter when she wakes up. She's going to lose her mind." "Probably." I sipped the coffee. It was terrible. Instant, weak, lukewarm. But it was something to hold on to. Betty, did I do the right thing? She was quiet for a moment, her calloused hands wrapped around her own cup. "You remember my son, Tommy? The one who moved to California?" "Yeah. He lived with me until he was 31. 31, Marge. Never paid rent, never helped with groceries, treated me like a maid. Finally, I told him he had 6 months to get out. He called me every name in the book. Didn't talk to me for 2 years. That's awful. It was the best thing I ever did for him." She looked at me with tired, knowing eyes. "He got his act together. Met a nice girl. Has a real job now. Calls me every Sunday. Sometimes they have to hate us before they can respect us, Marge. That's just how it is." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe I'd done something brave instead of something cruel. But all I could think about was Linda's face when she read that letter. All I could think about was the look of betrayal that would be there. The day dragged on. I watched the clock like it was my enemy, dreading 6 o'clock when I'd have to go home and face whatever was waiting for me. When my shift finally ended, I walked to the bus stop with legs made of lead. The apartment was quiet when I opened the door. Too quiet. Linda's coat was gone from the hook. Her purse wasn't on the side table. The letter I'd left on the kitchen table was crumpled up on the floor. I picked it up, smoothed it out, and saw what she'd written across it in angry red ink. "I hate you." I stood there holding that paper, and I felt every one of my 52 years pressing down on me like bags of wet laundry. What had I done? What kind of mother throws her own daughter out in the middle of December? But then I thought about that gas bill. I thought about Linda's new cashmere sweater and her fancy dinners and her complete indifference to my exhaustion. I thought about my mother's twisted hands and the way she never complained. And I knew that I couldn't keep carrying Linda forever, even if it killed me to let her go. I made myself some tea and sat at the kitchen table waiting. At 8 o'clock, I heard the key in the lock. The door banged open. Linda stormed in, her face red with cold and fury, with Rick trailing behind her like a shadow. "How could you?" She threw her purse on the couch. "How could you do this to me?" "Linda, don't Linda me. You're kicking me out. Your own daughter." Rick stood by the door, his hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. He was handsome in that slick way some men are. Dark hair combed back with Brill cream, a thin mustache, eyes that never quite met yours directly. I'd never trusted him, and right now, I trusted him even less. "You can stay with me, babe," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "My place is bigger anyway." Linda turned to him, her anger softening into something else. Relief, maybe. Or calculation. Really? Sure, why not? He shrugged. I've been thinking about asking you anyway. Just like that, I wasn't needed anymore. Just like that, she had an escape plan that didn't involve growing up at all. Linda, I said quietly, this isn't about punishing you. This is about teaching you that actions have consequences. You can't live your whole life expecting other people to carry you. Spare me the lecture, Mom. She grabbed her purse. I'm staying at Rick's tonight. Tomorrow I'll come get my things. And after that, you'll never have to see me again if that's what you want. That's not what I want. But she was already out the door, Rick following her, and I was alone again in my apartment with the radiator clanking and the snow falling outside and the terrible, crushing weight of having done something I couldn't take back. I didn't cry. Not then. I made myself dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, the same thing I'd eaten 10,000 times before. I washed the dishes. I got ready for my night shift. And when I walked out into the December cold at 5:30, I told myself I'd done the right thing, even if it didn't feel right at all. The next 3 weeks were a war fought in silence and slammed doors. Linda came back the following afternoon with Rick and his Firebird idling outside, exhaust fumes rising into the gray December sky. She didn't say a word to me, just marched into her bedroom and started throwing clothes into garbage bags like she was fleeing a crime scene. I stood in the doorway, watching, wanting to say something, anything, that would make this easier for both of us. Do you need boxes? I offered. I have some from the market. I don't need anything from you. Her voice was ice. She grabbed an armful of dresses from the closet, hangers and all, and shoved them into a bag. Rick's taking care of me now. He actually appreciates me. Linda, I appreciate you. That's not what this is about. She whirled on me, her eyes blazing. You threw me out, in the middle of winter. What kind of mother does that? The kind who loves you enough to let you stand on your own. That's such bullshit. She zipped up a bag so violently the zipper broke. You know what I think? I think you're jealous. Jealous that I have Rick, that I have a good job, that I'm not going to end up like you, old and bitter and alone, scrubbing other people's toilets for pennies. The words hit me like a fist. I felt my face go hot, felt tears pricking at my eyes, but I refused to let her see me cry. If that's what you think of me, I said quietly, then maybe it's good you're leaving. She grabbed another bag and pushed past me, her shoulder hitting mine hard enough to hurt. Rick was waiting by the door, looking uncomfortable, his keys jangling in his hand. You got everything, babe? He asked. Not even close, but I'm done for today. She looked back at me one last time. I'll be back for the rest. Don't touch any of my stuff. And they were gone. I stood in her empty but not empty bedroom, half her things still scattered around, the bed unmade, a picture of her and Rick on the nightstand, and I finally let myself cry. Big, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the little girl who used to climb into my lap and tell me I was the best mommy in the world. I cried for the teenager who wrote me Mother's Day cards with poems she'd written herself. And I cried for this stranger who looked like my daughter, but talked to me like I was garbage. Work became my refuge. At the laundry, I could lose myself in the rhythm of the machines. At Terminal Tower, I could pretend I was cleaning up more than just floors. I was scrubbing away the hurt, the doubt, the terrible question that kept circling in my head. Had I just destroyed my relationship with my only child? Betty tried to talk to me about it, but I couldn't. Every time she brought it up, I changed the subject or found an excuse to walk away. Mr. Kowalski from down the hall, the cigar smoker. He'd seen Linda storming out that day, and he gave me a look of such pity I wanted to melt into the floorboards. The official eviction notice came 3 days later. Mr. Greenberg delivered it himself, his face apologetic as he taped it to Linda's bedroom door. I'm sorry, Marge, he said. You sure about this? I'm sure. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Christmas came like a wound. I went to midnight mass at Sainta. Stanislaus on Christmas Eve, sitting in the same pew my mother used to sit in, the same pew where I'd held Linda as a baby during her baptism. Father Kowalski, another Kowalski, no relation, gave a sermon about the Holy Family and how Mary and Joseph trusted God even when they didn't understand his plan. I tried to feel that trust. I tried to pray, but all I felt was empty. Linda didn't call, didn't send a card, didn't acknowledge the holiday at all. I spent Christmas Day alone in my apartment, eating pierogi I'd made the night before, watching the snow fall, and wondering if this was what the rest of my life would look like. Just me and the radiator and the ghosts of better times. New Year's came and went. Linda moved the last of her things out on January 5th, a cold, bitter Tuesday when the wind chill made it feel like 20 below. She came with Rick and another guy I didn't recognize, a friend of his with a pickup truck. They loaded up her furniture. The bed Stanley and I had bought her when she turned 16, the dresser my mother had painted white, the bookshelf I'd assembled myself with a screwdriver and too much optimism. I watched from the window, not wanting to go down there and make it worse. Linda never looked up, never waved goodbye, just climbed into Rick's Firebird and drove away. And I knew with a terrible certainty that I'd lost her. The apartment felt bigger after she left, emptier. Her bedroom looked like a tomb, bare walls, bare floor, just the outline in the carpet where her furniture had been. I closed the door and didn't open it again for weeks. January turned into February. The snow kept falling, piling up in dirty drifts along the curbs. I went to work, came home, ate dinner alone, went to work again. Betty stopped asking me about Linda. Mr. Greenberg lowered my rent a little, since it's just you now. And I was grateful, though the money didn't make the silence any easier to bear. I tried to tell myself Linda was fine. She had Rick. She had her job. She was building her life just like she said she wanted to. But late at night, lying in bed and listening to the wind howl off the lake, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I should have trusted that feeling. It was a Saturday night in early March, the first week when the weather turned just warm enough to make you believe spring might actually come, when someone started pounding on my door. Hard, frantic knocking that made my heart jump into my throat. I looked at the clock. 2:17 a.m. I grabbed my bathrobe and hurried to the door, my mind racing with possibilities. Fire? Break-in? Mrs. Nowak having another heart episode? I opened the door. Linda stood in the hallway, soaking wet, mascara running down her face in black rivers, her hair plastered to her skull, like seaweed. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Behind her, rain poured down in sheets, the kind of cold March rain that feels like punishment. "Mom," she whispered, "can I come in?" I stepped aside. She stumbled past me into the apartment, leaving a trail of water on the floor I'd mopped that morning. She was wearing the cashmere sweater Rick had bought her, now ruined, and a thin skirt that clung to her legs. No coat, no purse, nothing. "Linda, what happened? Where's Rick?" "Gone." Her voice cracked. "He's gone." I grabbed a towel from the bathroom and wrapped it around her shoulders. "What do you mean, gone?" "He left, took everything. The money I'd been saving, my jewelry, everything." She started sobbing, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. "I came home from work yesterday and the apartment was empty. All his stuff gone. All my stuff gone. Just a note on the kitchen counter." My blood went cold. What did the note say? That he met someone else. That he needed a fresh start. That I'd figure it out. She looked at me with eyes so full of pain and shame and fear that I felt my anger dissolve like sugar in hot water. "Mom, I don't have anywhere to go. I spent everything I had on furniture for his place, on dates, on trying to keep him happy. I'm broke. I'm completely broke. I should have said I told you so. I should have reminded her of every warning I'd given, every red flag I'd pointed out about Rick. but looking at her standing there, my baby girl, 26 years old and utterly destroyed, all I could do was pull her into my arms. "It's okay," I whispered into her wet hair. "It's okay. You're home now." She cried for what felt like hours. I held her, rocked her, made her tea with honey the way I used to when she was little and had a cold. I got her out of her wet clothes and into one of my nightgowns, too big for her, but warm and dry. I put her in my bed and sat beside her, stroking her hair until she finally fell asleep, exhausted and broken. And then I went to the bathroom, closed the door, and cried my own tears. Not tears of vindication, but tears of rage at Rick for using her. Tears of grief for her pain. And yes, tears of guilt too, because part of me wondered if I'd pushed her into his arms by pushing her out of my home. The next morning, Linda woke up around noon. I'd already been to my shift at the laundry and come back. I made her breakfast, eggs, toast, the fancy strawberry jam she liked that I never bought for myself because it was too expensive. She ate in silence, not meeting my eyes. "I'm so stupid," she finally said. "You're not stupid. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That's not stupidity. That's just being human. You tried to warn me about him." "Yes, I did. And I told you to get a third job and stop complaining." She set down her fork, tears spilling over again. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was awful to you. I was selfish and entitled, and I treated you like garbage when all you ever did was love me." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I know. Can you forgive me?" It would have been easy to say yes immediately, to absolve her and move on and pretend none of it had happened. But I thought about Father Kowalski's sermon at Christmas, about Mary and Joseph trusting God's plan even when it was hard, about how real forgiveness isn't just words. It's a choice you make every day. "I forgive you," I said. "But Linda, we need to talk about what happens now. Really talk." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. You can stay here. But things are going to be different. I'll pay rent, I promise. Half of everything." "It's not just about money." I squeezed her hand. "It's about respect, about pulling your own weight, about understanding that I'm not just your mother. I'm a person too. A person with limits, with needs, with a right to dignity in my own home." "I understand." She looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. "Mom, how do you do it? How do you work as hard as you do and never complain?" "I complain," I said, managing a small smile. "Just not to you. I complain to Betty at work all the time. But you never quit. You never give up. Because quitting isn't an option." I poured us both more tea. "When your father died, I had two choices: fall apart or keep going. I chose to keep going because you needed me to. And along the way, I discovered something. I'm stronger than I thought I was. We all are. We just don't know it until we're tested." Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Rick used to tell me I was too dependent on you, that I needed to break free and be my own person. But he was wrong, wasn't he? I wasn't dependent on you. I was taking advantage of you. There's a difference. Yes, there is. And now I'm back here, dependent on you again." She laughed bitterly. "Some independence. This time is different," I said. "This time, you're here because life knocked you down, not because you were too lazy to stand up on your own. There's no shame in needing help when you've been hurt. The shame is in never trying to help yourself." We spent the rest of that Sunday talking, really talking, the way we hadn't in years. She told me about the job, how she actually hated it, how the lawyers treated her like she was invisible, how she'd stayed because it looked good on paper. She told me about Rick, how charming he'd been at first, how he'd slowly isolated her from her friends, how he'd borrowed money he never paid back, how she'd ignored all the signs because she was afraid of being alone. And I told her things too, about how scared I'd been when I kicked her out, about how many nights I'd lain awake wondering if I'd destroyed our relationship forever, about how much I missed her, even when she was living right down the hall being terrible to me. "I missed you too," she said. "I just didn't know it until I lost you." That night I went to my shift at Terminal Tower with something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Linda was home. She was hurting, yes, but she was also seeing clearly for the first time in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, we'd both survive this. But the next day, everything changed again. I came home from the laundry Monday afternoon and found Linda sitting at the kitchen table staring at a piece of paper with a look of pure horror on her face. "What is it?" I asked, setting down my purse. "I got fired." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "They let me go this morning. Said they were downsizing. Said it was nothing personal." I sank into the chair across from her. "Oh, Linda, I don't have a job. I don't have savings. I don't have anything." She looked up at me, her face pale. "Mom, what am I going to do?" And there it was, the real test. The moment where I had to decide if tough love meant letting her drown or throwing her a rope. I thought about my mother again, about how she'd worked until her hands were useless, about how she'd never turned away anyone who needed help, even when she had nothing to give, about how she used to say, "Małgorzata, grace isn't giving people what they deserve. It's giving them what they need. You're going to get up tomorrow," I said firmly. "You're going to put on your best outfit, and you're going to find another job. And while you're looking, you're going to help me with the bills by doing what you can. Cooking, cleaning, taking care of this place, so I don't have to do it all myself. You're going to prove to me that you're not the person you were 3 months ago. And if I can't find a job, you will. Because you have to. Because giving up isn't an option. Because that's what being a grown-up means." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm not going to throw you out again, Linda. But I'm also not going to carry you. We're in this together now. Equal partners. Understood?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Understood. Good. Now let's make dinner. I'm starving. And I've got to be downtown by 6. We made spaghetti together. Nothing fancy, just noodles and sauce from a jar. But it felt like communion. Like we were building something new from the ruins of what had been broken. She asked me about my night job. Really asked. And I told her about the Terminal Tower. About the view from the 51st floor. About the accountants and lawyers in their messy offices. "Have you ever thought about getting a different job?" she asked. "Something that doesn't make you work 70 hours a week?" "Every day," I admitted. "But I'm 52 years old with no college degree and a resume that says laundry worker and cleaning lady. Who's going to hire me for anything better? Someone who has eyes." She looked at me with something new in her expression. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. "Mom, you're the hardest worker I've ever known. Any employer would be lucky to have you. Well, until they come knocking, I've got the jobs I've got. Then I'll help, however I can. I promise." And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I believed her. The weeks that followed were hard in a different way than before. Linda looked for work every day, pounding the pavement, filling out applications, making phone calls. The job market was terrible that spring. Cleveland was bleeding manufacturing jobs, and everyone was competing for the same positions. She got rejection after rejection, and I watched her confidence crumble a little more each time. But she kept trying, and she kept her promise. She cooked dinner most nights, did the laundry, scrubbed the bathroom until it gleamed. She even came with me to St. Stanislaus one Sunday, the first time she'd been to Mass in years. Father Kowalski welcomed her back with a hug that made her cry. "Your mother's been praying for you every week," he told her. "Never missed a Sunday." Linda looked at me with surprise. "You have?" "Of course I have." I squeezed her hand. "You're my daughter." I never stopped praying for you. It was late April when Linda finally got a call back from a dentist's office in Shaker Heights looking for a receptionist. The pay was less than her lawyer job, but it had benefits and room to grow. She came home that evening glowing, waving the offer letter like a flag. "I start Monday," she said, grabbing me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "Mom, I got it. I actually got it. I knew you would." I hugged her back, my heart so full it hurt. "I'm so proud of you." That night we celebrated with bakery cake and tea, sitting at the Formica table where so much of our lives had played out. Linda raised her cup in a toast. "To second chances," she said. "To second chances," I echoed. "And to never giving up." We clinked our cups together, and I thought about how far we'd both come since that December morning when I'd written her that letter. About how sometimes the hardest thing you can do for someone you love is let them fall. About how grace isn't about avoiding consequences. It's about helping someone rise after they've faced them. Linda started her new job, and true to her word, she paid half the bills, half the rent, half the utilities, half the groceries. For the first time in my adult life, I had a little breathing room. I was still working 2 jobs, still exhausted most days, but the weight wasn't quite as crushing anymore. And more than that, I had my daughter back. Not the entitled stranger who'd told me to get a 3rd job, but the real Linda, the one who called me from work just to check in, who made me coffee in the morning before I left for the laundry, who sat with me at the kitchen table and asked about my day like she actually cared about the answer. One night in May, after I came home from Terminal Tower, I found Linda still awake, sitting at the table with papers spread out in front of her. "What are you doing up?" I asked, hanging up my coat. "I've been thinking," she said, "about your jobs, about how hard you work." And I did some math. She pushed a piece of paper toward me. "Mom, if we both keep saving, if we're really careful, we could build up enough for you to quit the night shift. Maybe in 6 months, maybe a year, but we could do it." I looked at the numbers she'd written down. Income, expenses, savings projections. She'd thought this through. She'd actually sat down and made a plan to help me. "Linda," I said, my voice catching, "you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You've been carrying me my whole life. It's my turn to carry you for a while. It's my turn to help." I sat down across from her and took her hands in mine. These hands that used to be so soft, that were getting rougher now. From work, from life, from learning what it means to stand on your own. "When did you grow up?" I asked softly. "When you made me," she said. "When you loved me enough to let me go." And sitting there in my small apartment on East 71st Street, with my daughter holding my hands and planning a future where I didn't have to destroy my body to survive, I finally understood what my mother had tried to teach me all those years ago. Dignity isn't about what you do. It's about how you do it. And grace isn't giving people what they deserve. It's giving them what they need, even when it costs you everything. Especially then. Summer came to Cleveland like a promise kept. The snow melted. The trees along East 71st Street bloomed with green leaves, and for the first time in years, I let myself believe that life might actually get easier. Linda kept her word. Every 2 weeks, she handed me her share of the bills, cash in an envelope with the amount written on the outside in her neat handwriting. She cooked dinners that were more than just canned soup and sandwiches. She scrubbed the bathroom on Saturdays and did the grocery shopping on Sundays. She became the partner I'd needed all along, and I watched her transform from a girl playing at adulthood into a woman who actually understood what it meant. But more than the practical help, what changed most was how we talked to each other. I'd come home from the laundry, exhausted and aching, and Linda would have coffee waiting. We'd sit at the kitchen table, that same Formica table that had witnessed so much of our history, and she'd tell me about her day at the dentist's office, about Mrs. Henderson, who came in with her grandchildren and always brought butterscotch candies. About Dr. Rosen, who told the worst jokes but made the patients laugh anyway. About learning the insurance forms and the appointment scheduling and the strange satisfaction of keeping things organized. "I never knew I could be good at something like this," she said one evening in June, the windows open to catch the breeze off the lake. "At the law firm, I always felt invisible, like I was just furniture they occasionally barked orders at. But Dr. Rosen actually listens when I make suggestions. He asks my opinion. He treats me like I matter." "You do matter," I told her. "You always did. You just had to find people who could see it." She looked at me across the table, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Not since she was a little girl, maybe. Vulnerability. Real, unguarded vulnerability. "Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. When you kicked me out, when you wrote that letter, were you scared?" I thought about lying, about saying no. I'd been certain. I'd been strong. But Linda deserved the truth. We both did. "Terrified," I admitted. "I was terrified I was making the biggest mistake of my life, that you'd never forgive me, that I'd spend the rest of my days alone, wondering what would have happened if I'd just kept my mouth shut and let you keep walking all over me. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway, because sometimes the right thing and the easy thing are so far apart, you can't even see them from each other." I reached across and took her hand. "Linda, you were drowning, and I was drowning trying to save you. We both needed to learn how to swim on our own before we could help each other. Does that make sense?" "It does now." She squeezed my hand. "At the time, I thought you were the cruelest person in the world. But you weren't. You were brave. Braver than I've ever been. You're plenty brave. You're sitting here, aren't you? Working a new job, rebuilding your life, facing what happened with Rick instead of running from it. That takes courage. I learned it from you." We sat in the fading summer light, holding hands across the table, and I thought about all the ways love can look. Sometimes it's soft and gentle. Sometimes it's fierce and terrible. Sometimes it's letting go so completely you think your heart will break from the weight of it. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's finding your way back to each other. Different than before, but stronger for the breaking. July brought a heat wave that made the whole city feel like the inside of an oven. The laundry plant was unbearable. All that steam and heat and heavy lifting. And I came home every day drenched in sweat, my head pounding, my body screaming for rest. Linda started meeting me at the door with cold washcloths and iced tea, helping me into a chair before I collapsed. "This is ridiculous," she said one particularly brutal afternoon when the thermometer hit 97 degrees. "Mom, you can't keep doing this. You're going to kill yourself." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Look at you. You can barely stand up." She knelt beside my chair, her face tight with worry. "Please, let's look at the numbers again. Maybe you can quit sooner than we thought." We spread the papers across the table. The same calculations she'd shown me in May, but updated with 3 months of careful saving. We'd been so disciplined, both of us. No eating out, no unnecessary expenses. Every spare dollar going into the coffee can. Linda kept on top of the refrigerator, marked Mom's Freedom Fund in her handwriting. "If we keep going like this," she said, her finger tracing down the columns of numbers, "you could quit the night shift by November. Maybe even October if we're really careful. That's still 4 months away." "I know, but it's better than never, right?" She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Promise me you'll think about it. Promise me you won't work yourself to death before we can make this happen." I promised, and I meant it. But I also knew something Linda didn't, something I could feel in my bones, in the way my back seized up when I lifted the heavy laundry carts, in the way my hands were starting to go numb at night. I wasn't sure I could make it 4 more months. August brought a different kind of storm. I was working my usual shift at Terminal Tower, 51st floor, lawyers' offices, when I reached up to clean a high window and felt something tear in my shoulder. The pain was so sharp, so sudden, that I dropped my rag and actually cried out. I stood there in that empty office, gripping my arm, trying to breathe through the agony. I finished my shift because I didn't know what else to do. I rode the bus home at midnight with tears running down my face, my arm hanging useless at my side. Linda was still awake. She'd started waiting up for me, even though I told her not to. And when she saw me, she went pale. "Mom, what happened?" "It's nothing. Just pulled something." "That's not nothing. You're crying." "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. The next morning, I could barely move my arm. Linda called in sick to work and dragged me to the emergency clinic on Buckeye Road. The doctor, a young woman who looked about Linda's age, examined me with gentle hands and a concerned expression. "You've torn your rotator cuff," she said. "Not completely, but it's a significant tear. You need rest. At least 6 weeks, maybe more. No heavy lifting, no repetitive motion. If you keep working on it, you'll tear it completely, and then you'll need surgery." "I can't take 6 weeks off," I said. "I have 2 jobs. Mrs. Kowalski, I understand. But you don't have a choice. If you keep going like this, you'll cause permanent damage. You might never regain full use of your arm." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I looked at Linda, who was standing by the door with her hand over her mouth, and I saw in her eyes what we were both thinking. We can't afford this. The doctor gave me a prescription for pain medication and a stern lecture about taking care of myself. Linda helped me home, settled me on the couch with ice on my shoulder, and then went to make phone calls. I heard her in the kitchen talking to Frank's janitorial service first, then to the plant manager at Cleveland Linen Supply. Her voice was calm, professional, explaining the situation, arranging for me to take medical leave. When she came back, her face was tight. "The night job says you can come back when you're healed, no problem. But the laundry," she sat down beside me. "They're replacing you. They said they're sorry, but they need someone who can work full shifts. They'll mail your final paycheck." I should have been devastated. I should have panicked. But all I felt was a strange, floating numbness. "Well," I said quietly, "I guess I'm retired from the laundry business." "Mom, it's okay." And weirdly, it was. Maybe this is God's way of telling me it was time to let that one go. Linda's eyes filled with tears. "What are we going to do?" "We're going to figure it out, like we always do." I reached for her hand with my good arm. "You've been saving for this, haven't you? For me to quit one of the jobs? Not like this. Not because you got hurt. Does it matter how we get there? As long as we get there?" I squeezed her hand. "Linda, listen to me. We're going to be okay. You have a good job. I'll still have the night shift once I heal. We'll tighten our belts a little more and we'll make it work. We've survived worse. But privately, in the dark hours of the night, when the pain medication wore off and my shoulder throbbed like a second heartbeat, I was terrified. What if I couldn't go back to the night job? What if I couldn't heal properly? What if, at 52 years old, I'd finally hit the wall I'd been running toward my whole life? The next weeks were the hardest I could remember. Not physically, though the pain was considerable, but emotionally. I wasn't used to being still. I wasn't used to being taken care of. Linda reversed our roles completely, bringing me meals, helping me dress, driving me to follow-up appointments in a borrowed car from her co-worker. She'd taken on the full burden of the bills, dipping into our savings to cover the gap, and I watched our freedom fund shrink with each passing week. "Stop worrying about the money," she told me one night when she caught me staring at the coffee can. "That's my job now." It shouldn't be your job to support me." "Why not? You supported me for 26 years. I think I owe you a few months." She put the can back on the refrigerator, out of my sight. "Mom, you gave me life twice. Once when you had me, and once when you kicked me out. Let me give something back to you. Please." I cried then. Deep, shaking sobs that hurt my shoulder but needed to come out anyway. And Linda held me, this daughter who'd been so lost and was now so found. And I let myself be held. I let myself be weak. I let myself be human. September arrived with cooler air and the smell of leaves beginning to turn. My shoulder was healing slowly, too slowly, but I was starting to regain some range of motion. The doctor said I could probably go back to light work in October, but nothing heavy, nothing that required reaching or lifting, which meant the night shift might be possible, but only barely. Linda had other ideas. She came home from work one afternoon in late September with an expression I couldn't quite read. Nervous, excited, scared, all mixed together. "I did something," she said, setting her purse down. "And I need you to not be mad." My stomach dropped. "What did you do?" "I talked to Dr. Rosen about you, about your situation." She sat down across from me, her hands clasped tight in her lap. "Mom, he needs someone to help with the office administration. Someone to handle the books, organize the files, manage the supply orders. It's not glamorous and it doesn't pay amazing, but it's only 40 hours a week. Days, no nights, no weekends, no heavy lifting." I stared at her. "Linda, he wants to interview you tomorrow, if you can. I told him about your work ethic, about how organized you are, about how you've been managing 2 jobs for years. He's impressed. He wants to meet you. I don't have any office experience. You have life experience. You have integrity. You have 40 years of showing up when you said you would, and doing what you said you'd do." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Mom, this could be it. This could be your way out. No more night shift, no more destroying your body, just a regular job with regular hours and actual benefits." I wanted to hope. I wanted it so badly it hurt worse than my shoulder. But I'd learned a long time ago that hope could be dangerous. What if he doesn't hire me? Then we'll figure something else out, but what if he does? She reached across the table and took my hand. What if this is the door we've been waiting for? What if everything that happened, me being awful, Rick leaving, you getting hurt, what if it all happened to lead us here? I thought about Father Kowalski's Christmas sermon, about trusting God's plan, even when you don't understand it, about how sometimes the worst things lead to the best things, if you can just hold on long enough to see it. "Okay," I said. "I'll go to the interview." "Really? Really?" Linda's face broke into a smile so wide and bright, it could have lit up the whole apartment. She came around the table and hugged me carefully, mindful of my shoulder, and I hugged her back with my good arm. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for not letting me." The interview was the next day at 2 o'clock. Linda helped me choose an outfit, a navy blue dress I usually wore to church, modest and professional. She did my hair, pinning it back the way she used to watch me do when she was little. She fussed over me like I was going to prom, and I let her because I could see how much it meant to her to help. Dr. Rosen's office was in a small brick building in Shaker Heights, the kind of neighborhood where the houses had big yards and the streets were lined with old oak trees. Linda walked me in, introduced us, then tactfully excused herself to let us talk privately. Dr. Rosen was older than I expected, maybe 60, with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He gestured for me to sit, and then settled behind his desk with a file folder in front of him. "Linda speaks very highly of you," he said. "She's my daughter. She's biased." He smiled. "Perhaps, but I've learned to trust her judgment. She's an excellent employee, reliable, organized, good with people. She says you're where she learned all that." "I tried my best. Mrs. Kowalski, may I be frank with you? Please, I don't need someone with office experience. I can teach anyone to use a filing system or run a calculator. What I need is someone I can trust. Someone who'll show up, do the work, treat my patients with respect, and help me keep this place running smoothly." He leaned back in his chair. Linda tells me you've been working 2 jobs for over a decade. That you've never missed a shift unless you were physically unable to be there. That you raised her alone after your husband died. That you're honest, hardworking, and dependable. Is that accurate? Yes, sir. Then I'd like to offer you the position. $6 an hour to start, 40 hours a week, health insurance after 90 days. You'd work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with an hour for lunch. No nights, no weekends, no heavy lifting. He looked at me over his glasses. What do you say? I tried to speak, but my throat was too tight. I tried to hold it together, but tears spilled over anyway. $6 an hour was more than both my other jobs combined. Health insurance, normal hours, the chance to heal, to rest, to have a life that wasn't just work and sleep and work again. Mrs. Kowalski, are you all right? Yes, I managed. Yes, I'm fine. I wiped my eyes. When can I start? How about Monday? That gives you a few days to settle things with your other employer. Monday is perfect. We shook hands, carefully because of my shoulder, and he walked me out to the waiting room where Linda was pretending to read a magazine, but was actually watching the door like a hawk. When she saw my face, she knew. You got it, she breathed. I got it. She burst into tears right there in the waiting room. Dr. Rosen smiled, shook his head fondly, and disappeared back into his office. Linda and I held each other, both of us crying, both of us laughing, both of us knowing that something huge had just shifted in our lives. On the bus ride home, Linda couldn't stop smiling. $6 an hour, Mom. That's almost twice what the laundry was paying. I know. And benefits. Real benefits. I know. You can quit the night shift. You can actually sleep. You can have a life. She grabbed my hand. Mom, everything's going to be different now. She was right. Everything was different. But not just because of the job. I gave my notice to Frank's janitorial service that evening. Frank himself, a gruff man who'd been running his business for 30 years, actually looked disappointed. You're one of my best workers, Marge. You sure about this? I'm sure. It's time. Well, good luck to you. You earned it. He handed me my final check. If you ever need a reference, you call me. My last night at Terminal Tower was October 15th, 1976. I rode the elevator up to the 51st floor one last time, pushed my cart through those familiar hallways one last time, cleaned those windows, and mopped those floors one last time. And when I was done, at midnight, I stood at the window and looked out at Cleveland spread below me. The city lights glittered like scattered diamonds. The lake was a dark mirror reflecting the moon. And I thought about all the nights I'd stood here, exhausted and aching, wondering if this was all my life would ever be. Thank you, I whispered to the city, to God, to whatever force had carried me through. Thank you for not letting me break. I started at Dr. Rosen's office on Monday, October 18th. Linda drove me on her way to work, both of us giddy like kids on the first day of school. The work was different from anything I'd done before. Organizing files, scheduling appointments, managing inventory, balancing the books. But Dr. Rosen was patient. Linda helped me learn the systems, and I discovered I was good at it. I liked the order of it, the logic, the way everything had its place, and I liked having energy left at the end of the day. I liked coming home at 6 o'clock instead of midnight. I liked having weekends off. I liked not being in constant pain. I liked having a life. November brought the first real snow, and Linda and I started planning for Thanksgiving. We invited Betty from the laundry and her son Tommy, the one who'd moved to California but was visiting for the holiday. We invited Mr. and Mrs. Nowak from down the hall. We invited Father Kowalski, who'd been eating alone since his housekeeper retired. The apartment was packed, warm with the smell of roasting turkey and pierogi and pumpkin pie. I watched Linda moving through our small space, laughing with our guests, refilling drinks, making sure everyone had enough to eat. And I saw her mother in her, my mother, who'd always believed that the best response to hard times was to gather people together and feed them. After dinner, when everyone was full and drowsy, Father Kowalski raised his glass of wine. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, "to Marge and Linda, to mothers and daughters, to the courage it takes to let go and the grace it takes to forgive, to new beginnings built on old foundations, to family, not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose to become." Everyone clinked glasses, and I looked at Linda across the table. She was crying, happy tears this time, and I realized I was crying too. "I love you, Mom," she mouthed. "I love you too," I mouthed back. December came like a benediction. 1 year since the letter. 1 year since the hardest decision I'd ever made. 1 year since I'd chosen my own dignity over my daughter's comfort, and almost lost everything in the process. On the anniversary of that morning, December 10th, Linda woke me up early with coffee and a small wrapped package. "What's this?" I asked, sitting up in bed. "Open it." Inside was a framed photograph I'd never seen before. It showed the two of us at my kitchen table, the Formica table, the one that had witnessed every moment of our story. I was laughing at something, my hand reaching across to touch Linda's, and she was looking at me with an expression of such pure love and gratitude that it took my breath away. "When did you take this?" "Last week." I asked Mrs. Nowak to sneak in and get it while we were talking. Linda sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes serious. "Mom, 1 year ago today, you did the bravest thing anyone's ever done for me. You loved me enough to let me fall. And then, when I needed you, you loved me enough to help me stand back up. I wanted you to have a picture of what that love looks like." I traced the frame with my finger, unable to speak. "I'm not perfect," Linda continued. "I'm still learning. I still make mistakes. But I'm not the person I was a year ago. And that's because you refused to let me stay that person. You refused to enable me. You refused to settle for less than I could be." She took my hand. "So thank you. Thank you for the letter. Thank you for the hard love. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself." I pulled her into a hug. This daughter who'd been lost and was now found. This girl who'd become a woman right before my eyes. "You did the hard part," I whispered. "I just pointed you in the right direction. You had to walk the path yourself." "We walked it together," she said. "Maybe not side by side the whole time, but together." That afternoon we went to Mass at St. Stanislaus. The church was decorated for Advent. Purple vestments, candles waiting to be lit, the promise of Christmas hanging in the incense-scented air. Father Kowalski's sermon was about the visitation, about Mary going to help Elizabeth, about women supporting women, about the way grace moves through ordinary lives and makes them extraordinary. I thought about my mother, working until her hands were useless, about Stanley, giving me his purple heart to keep safe because he said I was braver than any soldier, about Linda, learning to stand on her own and then choosing to stand beside me, about Dr. Rosen, giving me a chance when I had no credentials except a lifetime of showing up, about how we're all connected, all carrying each other, all figuring out together what it means to love and be loved. After Mass, Linda and I walked through the old neighborhood. The houses were strung with Christmas lights now, the porches decorated with wreaths and garlands. Mrs. Kowalski, still no relation, was putting up a nativity scene in her yard, the painted wooden figures glowing in the late afternoon sun. "Remember when you used to make me say a prayer at every house with a Mary statue?" Linda asked. "You hated it." "I did, but I loved that you cared enough to make me do it anyway." She slipped her arm through mine. "You were always trying to teach me something. I just wasn't ready to learn. And now? Now I'm ready." She smiled. "Now I understand that love isn't about making things easy. It's about making things right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." We walked in silence for a while, our breath making clouds in the cold December air. The sun was setting, painting the sky pink and orange and purple, the kind of sunset that makes you believe in beauty even in the middle of winter. "Mom," Linda said quietly, "what would you have done if I'd never come back? If Rick hadn't left? If I'd never showed up at your door that night? Would you have reached out to me?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know," I admitted. "I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I also knew that if I chased after you, if I tried to fix it, I'd just be enabling you all over again. So I prayed. I prayed every single day that you'd find your way back, that you'd learn what you needed to learn, that God would protect you, even when I couldn't." I squeezed her arm. "And he did. Maybe not in the way I expected. Maybe not in a way that didn't hurt. But he did." "Do you think that's what happened? That God orchestrated all of it? Rick leaving, me losing my job, everything? I don't know if God orchestrates things or just catches us when we fall. But I know this. Nothing is wasted. Not the pain, not the mistakes, not the dark nights when we think we can't go on. All of it makes us who we are. All of it teaches us something we needed to learn." We turned the corner onto our street. The apartment building rose up ahead of us, shabby and familiar, the windows glowing yellow against the deepening dusk. Home. Not perfect, but ours. Not fancy, but filled with everything that mattered. "I'm glad you kicked me out," Linda said suddenly. "You are?" "Yeah. Because if you hadn't, I'd probably still be that person. Still entitled, still selfish, still taking you for granted. I'd have missed out on becoming myself, on becoming someone I actually like." She looked at me. "You gave me the greatest gift anyone's ever given me, Mom. You gave me the chance to grow up." We climbed the stairs to our apartment, the wood creaking under our feet, the way it had for 30 years. Inside, I hung up our coats while Linda started dinner. Chicken soup, the way I taught her to make it, with carrots and celery and egg noodles. The apartment smelled like home. While she cooked, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the photograph she'd given me. The two of us laughing, holding hands across the Formica surface. And I thought about all the versions of us who'd sat at this table over the years. The young mother and baby girl, the widow and the child trying to understand why Daddy wasn't coming home, the tired woman and the sullen teenager, the breaking woman and the entitled stranger, the two women trying to find their way back to each other. And now this, two women who'd walked through fire and come out tempered instead of destroyed. "Soup's ready," Linda called. I joined her, and we sat down to eat. The food was simple but good, the kind of meal that fills you up in more ways than one. We talked about work, about Christmas plans, about whether we should get a tree this year or just put up the small ceramic one my mother had brought from Poland. Normal conversation, easy conversation, the kind you can only have when the hard things are behind you. After dinner, we did the dishes together. Linda washing, me drying, working in comfortable silence. The radio played Christmas carols in the background. Snow started to fall outside the window, soft and gentle, covering the city in white. "Mom," Linda said, handing me a plate. "Do you think you'll ever remarry? Find someone to share your life with? At my age? I doubt it. You're only 52. That's not old. It's not young, either." I dried the plate and put it away. "Besides, I'm not lonely. I have you. I have work I enjoy. I have friends. I have a life that feels full for the first time in a long time. I don't need a man to complete it. But would you want one? If the right person came along?" I thought about Stanley, about how much I'd loved him, how much I still missed him, about whether there was room in my heart for someone new, or if I'd given all the best parts of myself to being a mother and a survivor. "Maybe," I said honestly, "if he was someone who saw me, really saw me, and liked what he saw. If he was kind and patient and didn't mind that, I'm set in my ways. if he could make me laugh. I smiled. But I'm not holding my breath. I'm okay with it being just us. Just us, Linda echoed. I like the sound of that. We finished the dishes and moved to the couch, Linda putting her head on my shoulder, the way she used to when she was small. The television murmured in the background. But neither of us was really watching. We were just sitting together, being together, grateful for the simple gift of each other's presence. Mom, Linda said after a while, I need to tell you something. My heart jumped. What? Nothing bad, I promise. She sat up, turning to face me. I've been saving money, not just for bills, but extra. And I've been thinking about going back to school, maybe getting a degree in business administration or accounting. Something that would let me do more than just answer phones and schedule appointments. Linda, that's wonderful. But it would mean I'd have to cut my hours at work. Go part-time, which means less money coming in. She bit her lip. I wanted to ask you first if that's okay, if we can afford it. I don't want to put you in a bind after everything we've been through. I took her hands in mine. First of all, yes, we can afford it. Between my salary and your part-time work, we'll be fine. We might have to be careful, but we're good at that. I squeezed her hands. But more importantly, Linda, you should absolutely do this. You're smart and capable, and you deserve every opportunity to become whoever you want to be. I'm so proud of you for even thinking about it. You really mean that? With all my heart. When do you start? January, if I can get enrolled in time. Cleveland State has a good program, and I can take evening classes so I can still work days. She grinned. Who knows? Maybe in a few years I'll be the one with the fancy office job and you'll be the one saying, I told you so. I would never say that. Yes, you would. And I deserve it. She hugged me. Thank you, Mom, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Always, I said. Always and forever. Christmas Eve came with a fresh snowfall and the kind of cold that makes your nose hairs freeze. Linda and I walked to midnight mass together, bundled up against the weather, our boots crunching in the snow. The church was packed, the way it always was on Christmas Eve, with families crowded into pews and children fidgeting in their good clothes. Father Kowalski's sermon was short and sweet, about the stable, about how God chose to be born in the most humble circumstances, about how grace comes to us in unexpected places and unexpected ways, about how we're all just trying to find our way home. When we sang Silent Night, at the end, Linda's voice cracked with emotion. I reached over and took her hand, and we stood there together in the candlelight, surrounded by our neighbors and our history and the promise of a future we were building together. Walking home afterwards, the streets were quiet except for the soft crunch of snow under our feet. The houses we passed were dark now, most people already in bed, but a few still had lights twinkling in their windows. The whole world felt hushed, expectant, like it was holding its breath for something beautiful. I can't believe it's been a year, Linda said, since you kicked me out, since everything fell apart and came back together. The best year and the worst year all wrapped into one. Would you do it again? If you could go back, knowing how much it would hurt, would you still write that letter? I didn't even have to think about it. Yes, because look at us now. Look at who you've become. Look at what we've built together. It was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. I stopped walking and turned to face her. Linda, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have setbacks. Life is going to knock you down again. That's just how it works. But you're strong enough now to get back up. You've proven that, and I'll always be here if you need me. But I know now that you can stand on your own, and that's the greatest gift a mother can give her child, the certainty that they don't need her, even though they'll always have her. Linda's eyes filled with tears that caught the streetlight like diamonds. I love you so much, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. We walked the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. and when we got to our building, we stopped for a moment to look back at the neighborhood. The snow-covered streets, the houses with their Christmas lights, the church spire rising against the night sky. Cleveland in all its worn working-class glory. "It's beautiful," Linda said softly. "Yes," I agreed. "It is." We climbed the stairs to our apartment, the wood creaking its familiar greeting. Inside the Christmas tree, we'd gotten a real one after all, a small spruce from the lot on Broadway, glowed in the corner. We'd decorated it simply, with lights and some handmade ornaments from Linda's childhood, and it looked perfect. Linda made us hot cocoa, while I sat at the kitchen table, and we stayed up until almost 3 in the morning, talking and laughing and remembering. We talked about Stanley, about my mother, about the good times and the hard times and everything in between. We talked about our plans for the future, about Linda's schooling, about maybe taking a real vacation someday. Nothing fancy, maybe just a weekend at a cabin somewhere. We talked about the things that mattered and the things that didn't, and it all felt important because we were saying it to each other, because we'd earned the right to this peace, this contentment, this simple joy of being together. When we finally went to bed, I stood in the doorway of my room and looked back at Linda heading into hers. She paused, turned, smiled at me. "Good night, Mom. Good night, sweetheart." And I thought, this is what I fought for. This moment right here. My daughter happy and healthy and whole. Our relationship healed. Our future bright. This is what all the pain and sacrifice and hard choices were leading to. This is grace. I lay in bed listening to the radiator clank and the wind whistle past the window, and I thought about the weight of a signature. How a simple name on a piece of paper can change everything. How the hardest decisions are sometimes the most loving. How letting go and holding on are not opposites, but two parts of the same truth. I thought about my mother, working herself to the bone. About Stanley, keeping me safe even in death. About Linda, broken and remade. About Dr. Rosen, giving me a chance. About all the people who'd carried me when I couldn't carry myself, and all the times I'd done the same for others. We're all connected, I realized. We're all part of the same story. The story of ordinary people trying to live with dignity, to love with courage, to forgive with grace. The story of getting knocked down and getting back up. The story of being human. And maybe that's all God asks of us in the end. Not that we be perfect, but that we be faithful. Not that we never fall, but that we keep trying to rise. Not that we never hurt each other, but that we find our way back to love. I fell asleep that Christmas morning with a smile on my face and peace in my heart, knowing that whatever came next, whatever challenges or joys or sorrows the future held, Linda and I would face it together. Not as mother and child, not as caretaker and dependent, but as two women who'd walked through fire and come out the other side, who'd learned that the weight of a signature is really the weight of love, heavy enough to hurt, strong enough to heal, and always, always worth carrying. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, the same Formica table still holding strong after all these years, reading the invitation one more time. It's engraved fancy, the kind of thing I never thought I'd receive. Cleveland State University cordially invites you to the commencement ceremony for the College of Business. Linda's name is there, right in the middle. Linda Marie Kowalski, Bachelor of Science in Accounting, magna cum laude. She did it. 5 years of night classes while working full-time. 5 years of studying at this very table while I made her coffee and helped her with her note cards. 5 years of determination and discipline and refusing to give up. I'm so proud I could burst. She's 32 now, engaged to a good man named Tom. Not flashy like Rick, just solid and kind and crazy about her. He's an engineer at Ford, and he treats her like she hung the moon. They're getting married in September, and I'm making her dress myself, the way my mother made mine. I'm 58, still working at Dr. Rosen's office, still living in this same apartment. My hands are starting to look like my mother's did, spotted with age, a little twisted. But they still work. They still do what I need them to do. Betty retired last year from the laundry. Mr. and Mrs. Nowak moved to Florida to be near their grandchildren. Father Kowalski passed away in his sleep last winter. Peaceful, the way we all hope to go. The neighborhood is changing. New families moving in. Different languages being spoken. But the Virgin Mary statues are still in the yards, and St. Stanislaus still rings its bells every Sunday morning. Linda comes over for dinner every week, sometimes with Tom, sometimes alone. We sit at this table and talk about her work. She's an accountant now at a firm downtown, and my work and wedding plans, and life. We never run out of things to say. Sometimes I catch her looking at me with this expression I can't quite name. Gratitude, maybe. Or understanding. Or just love. The kind that's been tested and found true. Last week she brought me a present. Another framed photograph. This one from 6 years ago. Christmas 1976. The two of us sitting on the couch in this apartment. My arm around her shoulders, both of us smiling like we'd just discovered something precious. "I want you to remember," she said, "that we made it. Both of us. Together." I hung it next to the other photograph, the one from 1975. Before and after. Lost and found. Broken and healed. The weight of a signature. The weight of love. The weight of grace that carries us all home. The end. "Get a third job and stop complaining," my daughter said when I asked her to help with the household bills. The next day, I did something that left her in shock.